So boredom, pretty important thing, and honestly, I think it's a really useful tool when it comes to just a lot of different things, really, right? So, what do I mean by this? Boredom can help in terms of just figuring out what you want to do with yourself or creating new ideas and all this sort of thing, right? Like for example, I got bored and I created this video. This video is now existing, and this is probably a terrible video because it's my first video, but I did it because I was bored, right? And here I am sitting behind a microphone. I'm just kind of looking at the camera. I look all Spanish. I was like, whoa, look at me. but yeah, boredom can help with a lot of things, despite it being this like negative connotation thing. Or it's like, oh well, I'm doing nothing. Oh well, I could be doing something better with my time. That sort of stuff. But things, are you actually doing something better with your time? Like, think about it. You're probably just sitting there watching YouTube videos, watching some Netflix shows, watching some anime or something, play video games or whatever. And those aren't necessarily bad things, right? It's just like, those are just things that you could be using. Like, you could be using that same time that you're using to play video games and anime and all that for other things that you might be interested in. Like, for example, you might want to do some work, or you might want to, I don't know, just whatever comes up in mind. If you want to do a hobby, or if you want to learn a language, or if you want to actually spend time learning something new, right? And like, I get it. A lot of people think, oh, well, I don't want to work if I have free time. I just want to relax because I have more work to do. And that's like, okay, fair enough. You don't have to do a lot, right? A lot of people think when it comes to getting a new hobby, or like going for a new pursuit or anything like that, they think that they have to do everything in the way. They have to do all this work, and they gotta be on the grind set, right? It's like, no, dude. Like, you can chill. Like, I'm not taking this any seriously. I'm not expecting this to be like the best video because this is the first time I'm doing anything like this. And actually, I got this topic for this video because I was just like, I'm bored. I got nothing better to do, so why don't I just use what I have here and like set something up, and then voila, right? So yeah, and like sometimes boredom can again create new ideas. Like, actually, what is it? Like this thing right here. I don't know. You can't really see that well. These are like video ideas I had like just this morning because I was bored, and I was just like, okay, you know what? I could watch some YouTube videos. It's easy, right? It feels good. Or I could watch some anime, or I could do all these other things, right? But eventually, at some point, you'll get bored of that, and you'll just do it as like sort of cope for boredom, because there's a bit of you that wants to sort of avoid that boredom because it's like, oh, I'm bored. My default option is just go watch anime, go watch YouTube videos, whatever. And fair. It's pretty valid because that's what we've all been taught is what to do whenever we're bored. It's like, oh, go and treat yourself. You probably worked really hard. Take some time to relax. And yes, those are all important things. If you do it in a healthy manner is the thing, right? And yeah, and I mean, I'm not gonna say like playing video games like maybe for like an hour or two, right? It's like, oh, that's like it's gonna kill you or thing. Oh no, right? Or maybe like watching a couple minutes of YouTube, or like a little bit of anime. Like, that's all fine and dandy as long as you understand that. Well, yeah, no, like those are time wasters, but I'm doing it because I actually enjoy it, right? But if it comes to a point where you don't really enjoy it and you're kind of just doing it because you have nothing better to do, you probably need to think about that a little bit. And again, it's not to say like you're the bad person here, like, oh, you shouldn't be doing any of these things. How dare you, right? It's just more of like, that's what you've been used to. That's like your fallback to boredom. That's your response to boredom. What you train yourself neurologically, right? Because whip out the nerd shit, right? You your brain has this thing called neuroplasticity, which neuroplasticity is how it's basically the wiring of your brain in terms of adding new receptor proteins and creating these sort of neural patterns in your head, right? And the more that the more that neuroplasticity happens in your head, the more reinforced that thing will be, or the more like the quickly you'll understand that thing with like little input. So for example, when it comes to video games, right? When you were first playing video games when you were a kid, you probably were like, what am I looking at? What is this thing? I have this like weird thing on my hand, the controller, right? It's like what do I do? Like, how do I play this game? And you probably weren't really playing the game that well. You were probably just like walking around. Like I knew like what was it when I was playing with my Nintendo 64 and playing something like Super Mario 64 or like Mario Kart 64. I didn't know what I was doing, but like the wrong way, or like I'll go like to some random area, just start jumping all over the place, just do stuff like that, right? But eventually, at some point, I started to pick up the patterns. I started to learn some things, I explored some things, and then eventually, that's when it became interesting, and that's when that neuroplasticity sort of like took over and was like, oh, so this is what you have to do. There's an objective you have to do for a video game, and that video game, blah blah blah, and it would go on from there, right? And that's the sort of same thing when it comes to responding to boredom. You probably had that neuroplasticity reinforced for such a long time that it's gonna be weird to sort of break out of it. You know, it's gonna take some time to just get used to like a different response to it, a healthy response, if you will, right? And you know, this could be through maybe to start off small, right? Playing less video games, taking some time to just let that boredom sink into you. Just sit there and do nothing, stare at a wall, let your mind wander, just think of some weird thoughts, whatever thoughts come into your head. Like, the times that when I was really bored, or the times where I would just sit there and just do absolutely nothing, you know, that's when I would get some really interesting ideas. And sometimes it would be really spiritual, really deep, man, or like some crazy stuff like that, right? Where like it would be introspectiveness into my past, or understanding who I was as an individual, how I've changed, right? Or it could just be like some like dumb thing, and at the end of it, that could be fun. As odd as and weird as that sounds, it could be fun just to let your brain do whatever, because your brain can do some of the weirdest, craziest things. It can come up with like some of the most interesting stories that you probably wouldn't be able to see in movies and TV shows and whatnot. Because, and think about this, right? Movies and TV shows are, it's basically that sort of envisionment of what happens in the creator's minds, right? The director's mind, the writer's mind, hell, even the actors and like all the people backstage, whatever, right? All those people. Because they have to have some sort of thought process. They have to have some way of thinking, because you don't just magically come up with this story. It's like, oh, we have this story. Oh, look at this, right? Let's publish it up. I mean, you can recycle stories, but that's a different story. But yeah, when it comes to the sort of like storytelling or making media like that, you know, writers have to take some time and think. They just sit there and let thoughts flow in, and they'll write it down on paper, or they'll storyboard, or they'll talk to some people about it. And the same with actors, although actors is probably a bit more quicker, because, you know, they have a script, then they would talk to the director and be like, what do you envision this thing to be? Or, you know, you would look at, or maybe same thing with like sound effects people, audio engineers, or visual effects people. You know, they have to envision like, what does this look like in the face? Like, do you see what I mean, right? It's all translation of the brain coming onto media, in a sense. The exact same thing is happening in your mind when you just sit there and do nothing. And like, just go ahead and daydream. That in its own could be a hobby, funny enough. And yeah, it might be a weird hobby, and you know, you might think to yourself, why would I do that? Why not just like, it's much easier just, yeah, that's easier. It's easier just like go watch some stuff online, play some video games. It's much easier. But give your brain a chance. I'm sure your brain will come to some really interesting things. And maybe it could give you some really interesting ideas for what you could do with your future. What sort of hobbies you can have. What do you like to do? Who are you as a person? Because there has been a moment in, like, during college, right? And well, it was like first, second, yeah, around like first to second year of college, where I thought I faced the identity crisis. I did not think, but I was going through identity crisis, and I was like, who am I? What am I doing? Right? Why am I in college? Why am I doing this thing? Blah blah blah. And thank God, thankfully, my school had these like great benefits with mental health services, or you could get like a psychiatrist sponsored by the school. Not a psychiatrist, a therapist for the school, and you could have like a one-on-one session with them, and then you could talk about your problems, and that helped me so much. And I got a couple of exercises for that sort of situation, right? But the exercises, what they required me to do was just be isolated in my room, let my head think, generate some thoughts, and just write them down on paper. Because the exercise was just a perspective. Yeah, it was a perspectives exercise where it was like, how does your family see you? How does your friends see you? How do people outside see you? Like that sort of stuff. And that has probably been the most useful exercise for me going from that therapy session, because that allowed me to let my brain think, let my brain just generate some thoughts, and just go on ahead and just put stuff on paper. And again, that generation of thoughts led to other things as well, and other hobbies as well, right? And hell, this video is actually a great example, because this video wouldn't have existed if I wasn't bored, if I was watching some show or something, like, just sitting around my bed, fucking jerking off and shit, Looking at some big fat anime teddies, yo. Like, but yeah. And like, I'm having a blast doing it, right? Like, it might seem like it, might not, I don't know. But like, either way, I've done something. And the worst thing you could tell yourself is like, I did a thing. This probably was a waste of time. Nobody cared about it, but I enjoyed it. And that really is what all this is about. So, what is my take-home message from this? Boredom is a very useful tool. It is a tool that will help you generate all these wonderful ideas, and will give you some sort of inspiration, some sort of like push to go ahead and do things that you enjoy. Boredom is that key to the gate that's preventing you from listening to the person inside that's telling you what you really should do with yourself, with your free time, with career, whatever. Does not matter. Helps with a lot of things. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say. Hope you guys take care and use boredom to your advantage.